recording me. So I've been picking out some poems as a way into some of the themes that we work with in mindfulness training. And this month I've chosen a poem by Leonard Jacobson. It's called "Do Not Hurry." See how a flower grows. She is not in a hurry. She doesn't compare herself with other flowers. She doesn't long to change her color or find another form. She doesn't try to grow. But when the conditions are right, she will blossom. And the flower is trusting this process. So relax and stay in contact with your own inner reality. So this one leapt out at me today as I was looking through my file of poems and readings. Actually, it was the one on the first page, and I went, yep, I'll read that one tonight. And I guess a few reasons. Firstly, that the natural world really speaks to me as an exemplar of mindfulness and a really helpful reminder into mindfulness. Perhaps particularly as we're moving into spring and there is a little bit of blossoming happening, and perhaps I'm outside a little bit more as well, which is really a great pleasure. And so I was reflecting on kind of the ways in which the natural world can teach us mindfulness. And one aspect that sprung to mind immediately was time. Clock time being an invention of the mind. So whatever a clock it is just an agreed format that that helps us to meet together at the same time. And so it has its uses, but it is, of course, a convention. So 3 o'clock doesn't really exist; it's just a number. And of course, it can very easily create pressure for us when we compare ourselves against what time, how much time we've got left, or where we should be at a particular point, or maybe we've got a deadline that's kind of rapidly approaching. So clock time only works with reference to the past and future, or at least the imagined past and futures. Of course, they don't really exist. They're also just ideas of the mind. There's only the present moment, and ideas of past and future come to us in the present moment. So if we let go of clock time, maybe we can let go of hurrying. That doesn't mean that things can't happen, but they all happen as part of a process in the present moment. So I heard this lovely phrase which Mark Williams used, where he spoke about horticultural time. And that seems to me a really nice perspective, that horticultural time is actually about the connection with seasons and the conditions in the environment. So it's true that a flower will grow in certain seasons and certain conditions, but there isn't a kind of sense of it's the name of the time that makes it happen. It isn't the name summer that makes kind of blooming happen. It's the right conditions that we then call summer or spring. And of course, with some of the changes that we're seeing in the climate, we're seeing quite often like flowers blooming at different times. And so kind of ideas about what should be, can start or are starting to change. So plants, animals, and insofar as our kind of animal bodies operate, there's a natural responding to the combination of environment and biology in order for blossoming to occur. So when the conditions support it, it will happen. So in some sense, any kind of sort of struggling or straining to make something happen doesn't really work. so well. We can attend to the conditions, just so that just as with a flower, we can help the conditions for it to grow, to occur. But having a kind of sense of the right time, it should be happening now. And this, whether this refers to gardening or anything else, perhaps isn't so helpful if we are caught up in that sense of when something should happen, including our own development. Another area where, and this kind of leads on from the previous one, another area where mindfulness can learn from nature is the sense of attunement. Rilke had this lovely phrase where he says, nature doesn't push out from where it belongs. So whilst I'm not so sure I agree with Leonard Jacobson, that a flower necessarily trusts, because I'm not sure that's kind of the flowers as conscious as that. But nevertheless, there is an attunement to the conditions, an unconscious attunement, and whereas actually, in sort of in the 19th and early 20th century, a dominant idea of nature was as being like a clock, like literally a time mechanism. Actually, now a lot of the scientists working in natural fields like biology and physics actually speak about nature much more as like a symphony, like an orchestra playing. The sense of attunement with each other, and it's the connections with all of the different parts that make the music happen. So nature's attuned. Nature's also itself, in the sense of a kind of authenticity. And in the poem, Leonard Jacobson says, the flower doesn't long to change her color or find another form. So the flower is just itself. And it's only when we have our thinking minds, like human beings, then start to have the ability to compare and wish for something to be different and create a version of ourselves, a kind of future idealized version of ourselves that we'd like to be, that therefore can make us suffer, because we then look at ourselves now and go, well, I'm not that. I want to get to be that, and this isn't good enough, and all the other judgments that might come from that. This doesn't happen in the natural world. Kind of nature just is what it is. It's authentic. And yes, again, with the conditions changing, that can lead to transformation. But nature is what it is. So it's when we get caught, perhaps, in the ideas about what should be, that suffering occurs. And then also quality that many of you will have heard me talk about before in mindfulness, which is non-striving, one of the 8 attitudinal foundations of mindfulness that Jon Kabat-Zinn identifies. And that sense of the flower not trying to grow. And there's a story that, again, Jon Kabat-Zinn refers to, about a child trying to get a butterfly out of a cocoon, because they're kind of impatient to see the butterfly. And of course, the caterpillar isn't ready and dies. So that sense of kind of like having to be patient for things to emerge in their own time. And there is a process of transformation that occurs in nature and indeed in mindfulness training. But as soon as we keep sort of checking it out, is it working yet? Am I better? It's a bit like we're kind of digging into our own cocoon and sabotaging the process. So conceptual mind and the judging mind and the ability to think has so many benefits for us. It does give us the capacity to transform, perhaps more consciously, but only if we're not attached to the habits of mind, the ideas, the plans, the comparisons that come up along the way. So the way mindfulness can help us to do this, and this is where the kind of like the nature analogy kind of pauses, is that as human beings, we have this capacity to be aware. So whereas in nature, this is kind of an unconscious process, at least as far as we know, whereas other parts of nature, I shouldn't speak of ourselves as not being part of nature. But where perhaps we have a different capacity is in that ability to be aware of both our embodied being and the thinking that happens about it. And if we can relate to the world from that awareness, then we can include thinking, we can include our attunement with the senses, with our bodies. And there doesn't need to be a kind of like a problem, a sort of dichotomy between, well, should I be thinking or feeling? It can all be included in awareness if we can bring our awareness to the way that we are and the way that the world is. So there's a kind of an authenticity and a non-striving and an attunement that can happen that includes our body, our mind, our relationship with the environment. So awareness actually makes it possible. So there's a kind of wholeness that comes when we relate to the world with awareness. And in mindfulness training, we're practicing this through the capacity for flexible attending. So when we bring our attention back to the breath, or we notice that our mind has wandered into a thought, or we notice we're impatient, and there's a kind of desire to get to a future state, we're training in flexible attending because we notice that through awareness and can choose to come back. We train in the attitudes of acceptance, patience, trust, curiosity. And we're also recognizing that there is a kind of a bigger us that can witness all of the activity of our ideas and thoughts and our body sensations. And that's kind of proof, if you like, of that once we transcend thinking and feeling, that we can actually hold it all. So by becoming the awareness that knows all of this stuff, there's a kind of a freedom that can come from it. And so we start to be able to influence. We can influence our lives. We can influence our environment. We can influence our relationships. I don't mean control, because we're still part of nature and there are distinct and definite limitations to how much power we have. And perhaps part of the problem is, when we start to believe we have more power than we have, that just kind of feeds the mind that, strives for something maybe that's not possible. But if we can get a realistic, authentic sense of who we are from paying attention and through practicing our capacity to be fully present, then we develop perhaps the agency that we can have more fully. So it's like a latent capacity within us that can come out. It's already here, but we can, if you like, we become fully human insofar as our minds, brains, bodies, world allow. So not being in a hurry, not needing to buy into comparisons, not needing to try to be someone different or find another form, trusting the conditions of our lives and our practice as the kind of the environment that we have to grow in if we let ourselves. And then the last line again, so relax and stay in contact with your own inner reality. So if we can kind of just tune in to the way things are within us moment by moment, stay in contact with our inner reality, awareness, noticing perhaps the wandering mind, discomfort in our body, then we are cultivating these mindfulness skills, and nature is a really helpful reminder to teach us this kind of quality of just being with what's happening. And we have the capacity to notice that process. I hope that doesn't sound too garbled. Is it making sense? Yeah? All right. So I talked for slightly longer than I intended to. So let's drop into a practice. There'll be some opportunity to explore the theme a little bit later on, before the end of the session. But for now, let's see if we can actually connect with our essential nature in our bodies, and be aware of the process of embodiment and how perhaps conceptual mind takes us away. You might notice your mind wandering during this practice. That's excellent, because the noticing of it is awareness, and bringing it back, which is the influence we have, training the influence we have, all in service of living as fully and compassionately and connectedly as we can. So, inviting you to let go of all of those words that I've just said, and to notice, and notice that you're noticing. So to notice the experience of right now in this body, and the natural processes of being alive, breathing. Sense of the body affected by gravity, kind of weighted on the ground or the chair or whatever you're sitting on or lying on. Noticing the experience of temperature and how the conditions of the moment are enabling you to be. If there was no air in the planet, we wouldn't be alive. Similarly, if there was no food, water, the conditions of this planet have enabled us to blossom. To the extent that we are alive as conscious beings. So seeing if we can let go into trusting nature to support our being alive in this moment. Maybe enjoying the in and the out breath. It's nurturing us. The rather remarkable experience of being in a human body. And seeing if we can let this be enough. So just as the flower doesn't try to be something else, can we allow ourselves, at least in this moment, just to be us, as we are, with our imperfections and difficulties and many attributes and resources, and also just letting ourselves be exactly as we are. Not needing to be anyone different, not needing to be a better version of you or me in this moment. Trusting that if the conditions support our growth, then we will grow. And we're contributing to these conditions by not hurrying, by not needing to compare or judge ourselves, rather by being kind. And so maybe it's enough just to settle with our bodies and inviting you maybe to find an anchor place in the body. If you like, breathing is a suitable anchor for many people, but feel free to choose somewhere different. And just to drop the mind into the sensations of breathing. Drop the attention in here, practicing flexible attending. Attuning to our own natural processes. It's the rising and falling of breathing. Seeing if we can really feel it and not to need to buy into thinking about it. If thoughts arise, we just let them pass through the mind like skies, like clouds across the sky. And awareness is just noticing the following of the breath and perhaps the wandering away from it. So you don't have to try to do anything other than just gently invite attention to follow breathing as an experience and noticing that there is awareness of this. Seeing this as a natural state. Just an authentic being. Taking it moment by moment. Letting go of any need for things to be different, including if the experience is difficult just now. We don't have to try and judge ourselves against some standard of being relaxed or calm. Letting ourselves be exactly as we are with all our various agitations or resistances. Can we include them all and come to rest with them all as the attention is invited to drop over and over into breathing? If we do notice the mind has wandered, we can just invite the attention gently and patiently back again. No judgment needed. It's completely normal. And in this process, we are watching in real time how the conceptual mind draws us into hurrying or rushing around or identifying with comparisons or ideas or plans about the future or regrets. And that's fine, just to part of being human. And the invitation is to come back to now in the body, letting this be enough. So not trying to get rid of thinking, but just unhooking from it. It can be there in the background. If we notice any tensing or struggling in the body, maybe we could just invite it to rest in being. Not needing to be ahead of ourselves or behind. Just here and now in this body, awake, noticing habits of mental activity. You might like to open up from our anchor place to the whole body, perhaps just letting attention be the same shape as the body. So rather than just spotlighting one region, it kind of opens up to morph into the body itself and receiving whatever experiences in the body, sensory experiences inside, physical sensations, emotional sensations. Can it be okay just to let this experience be just as it is? Can we trust that, like a flower grows in suitable conditions? So maybe just the practice of sitting here and attending to ourselves with kindness are suitable conditions for growing. We don't need to try. sitting like a flower waiting to grow, just being nourished by the conditions. And this very sitting here, an expression of our being a part of nature. Not needing to hurry. And inviting a sense of trusting whatever emerges for you, whether pleasant or neutral or unpleasant experience. Can we trust what is emerging right now is giving us what we need to deepen our humanity if the conditions are suitable, and the conditions are our practice, our willingness to be here and not have to deflect from anything or reach anything, just accepting ourselves as we are right now with a gentle approach, softening awareness. So, whatever it is that we're noticing is enough for us to learn from if we keep giving ourselves to this work. And as we come towards the end of this practice, we might like to thank ourselves for creating the conditions, co creating the conditions, influencing the conditions by coming here and being willing to create the space and the time, and of course, having the good fortune that that's possible, the willingness to sit and be when all of the drive in the world is to struggle and get ahead. We can thank ourselves for being willing to sit and be still, even if what was within us or is within us isn't still. The conditions are being created moment by moment for our humanity to flourish as a part of nature. So no hurrying needed. Noticing how it is as perhaps the eyes open and we get a sense of being together again.